Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I don't know why we say channel. Welcome back to my YouTube videos. Welcome back to my show. I'm going to start saying show. I hate channel. Channels to us in the UK are TV channels, of which we had 3 and then we had 4. When I was 12, we got our 4th channel. And it was many years before we got anything else. As a kid, I never had Sky or any of those kind of satellite channels because they were rubbish. They were kind of cheap and nasty and owned by the people who did things like The Sun and the News of the World and those kind of trashy newspapers. And we always knew they were just like sports and rubbish, really. And then eventually we got Channel 5, which was like legitimately rubbish and kind of nicely tacky, and still is. And of course now there's too many channels and too much streaming. And as I think I've said, I've cut down on how many things I stream from platforms, that's the word. I'm much more reliant on my own DVDs and things we've recorded and made discs of over the years. Although last year there was more terrestrial TV shows I was interested in. Here comes Socks. Anyway, that's me talking about channels. I'm going to start saying, welcome to the show, and pretend I've got some kind of cable show. Whoops. Like in The Story Lady, my favourite TV movie ever, with Jessica Tandy from 1992. Look it up. It's all about reading to an unseen audience. Come on, you can come and sit with me. There's no Dreamies up here. They're all downstairs. You've eaten all the Dreamies. He's so loud and bullying. Noisy. I hope everyone's well. We've had a tiring weekend. My friend Stuart was down visiting. Stuart from Edinburgh, who runs Obverse Books, which is this great independent publisher, small press, that does all kinds of science fiction and TV tie-ins and other genres, but mostly kind of science fiction, stuff that Stuart likes, basically. And we've been friends for a long time, almost 20 years. And he came down because we had a weekend of it. And on the Saturday, we went to see Me and Him and Who, or Who and Him and Me, a play by Stephen Wyatt, which was on in town on a special John Nathan Turner Day. John Nathan Turner was the most outrageous Doctor Who producer who did all of 1980s Doctor Who, whose work I love. 1980s Doctor Who gets bad press in this country, which is a shame. It's a unique TV landmark, I would say. And it's everything that was on from when I was 10 till when I was at university. And so I'm very fond of that form of Doctor Who. And this is a 2-man play looking at the relationship between the producer and his partner, who argue and bicker and drink vodka and try to write memoirs while they're both ill. It's a very kind of sad and funny story. It's a bit like, I mean, they talked about it being like vicious, but I was reminded more of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, one of my favourite scripts and films. There's a touch of that about it. I'd love to see it expanded. You got a sense, listening to these 2 people, that you'd shared the afternoon with lots of people because they invoked all these other characters, Janet Fielding and Tom Baker and Michael, whatever he was called at the BBC, the higher up people. The snobby people higher up the BBC were conjured as well. These Oxbridge graduates, the Old Boys Network, who looked down upon our hero, John Nathan Turner. And you kind of want to see it. I'd love to see a TV movie of all of this. It has to be done. And I loved as well the conjuring of this house around them, where they're planning a garden party with a gazebo. I don't know if it ever happened in real life, if they got to bring back all of these people they'd worked with to come and celebrate. And they were doing their house up. And we hear about the removal of a burgundy bathroom suite, this curse of a kind of colourful 1970s, a naff 1970s that they're trying to remove from their house and update at the ends of their lives. And it becomes this kind of metaphor for almost for Doctor Who itself. The burgundy bathroom suite that's out of time. I'd love to see that on film. Bits of this bathroom being evicted from the house, exiled from the house. When I was a teenager, we had an avocado bathroom suite, and the ensuite in that house, I think, was champagne coloured. This was the 80s, and these things were slightly more muted, but still not something you'd see nowadays, I suppose. But then people's houses these days, the houses that people aspire to, are kind of like hotels, and they're all, if not beige, sandstone colour or cloud colour. Of course, our bathroom isn't. Actually, our bathroom's painted burgundy, thinking about it. Actually, it is. We've got burgundy walls. And our ensuite has tomato soup red tiles and a pink and gold glittering floor. So, yeah, we're colourful here. Anyway, the play was great, and we saw lots of nice people, lots of lovely people, people I don't see very often, all kind of Doctor Who related. Lots of them gay men, lots of them bearded. And we all come from the same time, the same tribe in time and space. Of course, there were people who were younger and older, and there was even some women. And you get comments afterwards about the kind of pictures you post about everybody having beards, ho ho, and everyone being men. It's like, well, there is a meaning to the word homosexual. No, it was more mixed than I make it seem. And we had some very funny conversations, and a good time was had by all. It was even good at home, our kind of art centre, indie cinema and theatre, where we all went for drinks and food afterwards. A place that I usually find soulless compared with its predecessor, the Corner House Cinema and Cafe, long gone. Home is usually disappointment, but this time it was great, actually. We had a lovely meal. And then decamped to Canal Street and the heaving Via, which, as Stuart reminded me, is the place that's decorated inside like the 8th Doctor's TARDIS. That's how I always sold it to him in the TV movie, and it is. Except he didn't have a drag queen called Lola Lasagna singing Yes Sir, I Can Boogie in the TV movie. It would have cheered that movie up had there been a drag queen singing in the TARDIS. So there we all were, and we dragged out, dragged out Matthew Waterhouse, who played Adric all those years ago, which delighted our friend Johnston, who'd never been to the village before. Honestly, straight people. So it was a delightful evening and a really good weekend, and I'm still quite tired at the end of it. Although today I promise, written 2,500 words on this memoir piece, which is still slowly expanding bit by bit as I write about the late 1990s in my life. Right, books have accrued during the weekend by accident more than design. I'm still reading this, Ziggyology, which I think I talked about. The book by Simon Goddard that looks at the cultural products that eventually arrive or eventually coalesce into the figure of David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. And there are chapters on H.G. Wells, Gustav Holst, and also the Velvet Underground and Stanley Kubrick making 2001, and how all these elements eventually cohere. It's really good, really, really well researched and put together. And actually, I'm reading it much slower than I intended to. This is still my kind of January reading, and I still haven't opened February's book bag, which I'm looking forward to. That might be the next video. This pile of books is all things that arrived this weekend in different ways. let's see. First of all, things in the post were things from last week when I was getting carried away reading my science fiction stories edited by Edward Belishan, which I read in this tatty Kingfisher paperback with a lovely cover from the very end of the 90s. I looked online and found it was 10 years older, and it was originally a beautiful hardback like this, with all the same drawings, but these huge pages. And how much was that? No, it's cut off. So I had to have this. It cost about £3, as did this, which I think I've shown you. So they were my science fiction anthologies, which are going to go proudly on that shelf there. I think so I can reach for science fiction whenever I feel like it. Listen to this. This is a story which I think I must have read years ago, called The Fun They Had by Isaac Asimov. I read this last night after the weekend, and it seemed to sum up lots of stuff. Margie even wrote about it that night in her diary. On the page headed May the 17th, 2157, she wrote, "Today, Tommy found a real book." It was a very old book. Margie's grandfather once said that when he was a little boy, his grandfather told him that there was a time when all stories were printed on paper. They turned the pages, which were yellow and crinkly, and it was awfully funny to read words that stood still instead of moving the way they were supposed to, on a screen, you know. And then, when they turned back to the page before, it had the same words on it that it had had when they read it the first time. "Gee," said Tommy, "what a waste. When you're through with the book, you just have to throw it away, I guess. Our television screen must have had 1,000,000 books on it, and it's good for plenty more. I wouldn't throw it away." "Same as mine," said Margie. She was 11 and had seen as many textbooks as Tommy had. He was 13. She said, "Where did you find it?" "In my house," he pointed, without looking, because he was busy reading. "In the attic." "What's it about?" "School." Margie was scornful. "School? What's there to write about school? I hate school." Margie always hated school, but now she hated it more than ever. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse until her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the county inspector. He was a round little man with a red face and a whole box of tools with dials and wires. He smiled at Margie and gave her an apple, and then took the teacher apart. It's only a couple of pages long. It goes on after that. But it's as sarcastic and as chilling as Kurt Vonnegut is when he writes, the one I'm thinking of, Bergeron, whatever it is, famous story, I'll remember. But the idea of automatic teaching, of learning by rote, of being taught by computers, it's all telling in this particular day and age, of course. It's funny, there's been a few things recently with fans, Doctor Who fans, responding to book covers, and one of mine that's just been revealed. There's been a reveal of my Doctor Who Dracula novel, which comes out, it's Doctor Who Dracula with an exclamation mark, which comes out in November, and I've had a couple of comments from people going, "Are these made by AI?" Which is really insulting, given that AI is just this scrappy computer thing which melds together a few different elements stolen from other people's work across the internet. So it's really quite insulting to be accused of that. And of course what they mean is, and what's frightening is that they're talking about juxtaposition, of putting elements together in an interesting, unusual way, the thing that we look to artists to do. But people are more familiar with the idea of AI filching stuff than they are with people making original work, and I find that quite frightening in a way. It's only a couple of people, and they're probably complete nanas. Anyway, that's my new book cover. I don't know if you can see in the reflections. Angelo Rinaldi is the artist who's done all these covers, and I think this is his 7th, and it's his 4th. Is that right? For me. And I'm really pleased with it. All the blood red on Barbara's coat, and the doctor's tie, and the garlic bulbs that Barbara's wearing as a necklace. That's out in the summer, 4th summer in a row I've had one of these books out. Right, and what else? Next, Stuart came to visit and brought an early copy of his next book, Death at the Playhouses. It's book 2 in the Lowe and Le Breton mystery series. The first one came out last year. It's 1971, and in between filming seasons of Flog It and Leg It, ageing actors Edward Lowe and John Le Breton sign up for a short run of Shakespearean tragedies at the Bolton Playhouse. But once in Lancashire, they discover they have been invited to join the theatre's repertory company for 2 reasons. Because the company manager is keen to take advantage of the publicity surrounding their successful BBC comedy series, and because Sir Nathaniel Thompson, the much-lauded star of the show and Knight of the Realm, has been sacked for drunkenness. John fears an awkward scene should Thompson, who he knew during the war, return to reclaim his job. But when the great actor's body is found bludgeoned to death in a nearby alleyway, the unlikely crime-solving duo find themselves investigating another fiendish mystery that takes them from the northwest of England to the Netherlands, and which, rather inconveniently, seems to have John's ex-wife Sally at its heart. I think this is out in April, and you can pre-order now. It's proper cosy mystery stuff with really vivid, funny characters and a kind of darkness at its heart. At least that was the case in the first book. It was bloody and disturbing, actually. The actual crime at the heart of it. It's why cozy crime as a genre title is a bit of a misnomer, I always think. The trappings are cozy and the feeling it gives you is cozy, especially in kind of country house, snowy ones. But actually at the heart of it is something really quite nasty. They're always about murder, they have to be. I've just seen the nice inscription. Thank you, Stuart. And what else? He also brought me a copy of this, Locked in Space, the 11th volume of short stories, Iris Wildthyme and Panda short stories from Obverse Books, which came out a couple of years ago. It's the most recent one. It came out from lockdown. I think their story is based around lockdown. I haven't seen this one. And I was never sent it by the editor, which is a bit of a mistake, given that I let them use my characters to do these. I think Stuart's tried to send me one that went missing in the post. I had a rash of parcels, book parcels, to go missing in the post. And in fact, when we got back yesterday, there was one in somebody else's waste paper bin outside. The post office had left a parcel in a paper recycling bin. It's crazy. No wonder things go missing. Anyway, I've got one now. Socks, come on. And then I bought a book for myself. It's by the same author, Simon Goddard, as Ziggyology, because I found out that he's doing this series of annual books, each one based on a different year, working its way through the 1970s. And they're essentially novelizations, that's what they are. Novelizations of David Bowie's life through the 1970s, building up to tell the whole story, using a similar method as the Ziggyology book, zigzagging from papery evidence and anecdote and building a kind of interior life for this character as he develops and becomes mega successful. I just love the format of them. I love the idea of them, and I don't know why I hadn't been aware of them until I read his first book on Bowie. Look at that. These are beautifully made by Omnibus Press, so I'm giving them a big plug as well, and I'm sure I'm going to end up buying the whole lot as the years go by. I think there's about 4 out to start with. And then yesterday we had a little day out in Stockport, which is now full of nice kind of antiques and junkie shops and vintage shops, bookshops and record shops. So we had a couple of hours doing that because that's the stuff we all love to do before we took Stuart to the station. And I got a copy. It's a shop that is vintage and all the second-hand books are beautiful, but they're quite dear, kind of 10, 15 pounds. For things that aren't actually that good. They're kind of, book club associates books, the Charing Cross book club book series. They're overpriced. This one is underpriced because the cover's water damaged. But look, it's book 2. It's the second Darling Buds of May novel by H.E. Bates. A Breath of French Air. I think it's the second one. Oh, but look how beautifully that's typeset. A pleasure to read. Besides it being H.E. Bates, who is always a pleasure to read. I haven't read half enough, just a handful of his books. But I thought I should go back to this series. And then a novel by Elizabeth Laird, and that's a name I know from childhood. Come on, and I can't think. Can you see him? I can't think what it was I read. But this was in a charity shop. It's a 1980s or 90s kids book published by New Windmills from Heinemann. And they did lots of books, usually for schools. And there's a list at the back that's just mind-boggling. It makes you want to collect them all in this edition. Besides novels by Bernard Ashley and Nina Borden, these wonderful puffin novelists of the 70s, you've got, and John Christopher and Roald Dahl and Andrew Davies and Peter Dickinson, all from that kind of era. You have Anne Frank and Graham Greene and Gerald Durrell and F. Scott Fitzgerald. So for schools, it was how you encourage kids who are reading contemporary kids' books to read classics from a generation back or 2 generations back. It's very clever. They'd all be together in a school library. So it's stretching your sense of time, sense of history, sense of where literature can go. And I always thought that was very clever. It could almost trick you into expanding your horizons. And of course, that's what books should always do. It's much better than saying, here's books you might like because they're set in your time. Here's old books about people in the past that are a bit boring and a bit more difficult, which is what they tend to do, I think, now. Look at that. Solzhenitsyn, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, next to Dodie Smith's The 101 Dalmatians. Like, where do you ever see that? And I know it's because they're alphabetical, but they're on the same publisher's list, together in the same kind of branding. I'm just going to tear off the price sticker of 99p on the back. Not very well. This sounds like just the kind of book I love. Red Sky in the Morning. Anna's cares and concerns are those of any teenager until her brother Ben is born handicapped. At first, Anna is confused. She loves Ben, but she can't bring herself to let her friends at school know about him. Anna learns to accept her feelings about Ben, but other problems lie ahead. Can Anna look after Ben while coping with the other concerns in her life? School, I'm making a right mess of this sticker. A Saturday job and the changing relationships with her friends. And will Anna's family remain together? They don't say handicapped now. We've been through a number of different terms since. I can't think what it is. I don't think we say differently abled or any of those kind of mild and slightly patronising terms. And it's not quite special needs. I think it's something like people who have complex needs. And I'm not sure about what I think of that as a term either. It doesn't tell you anything, does it? And sometimes in the effort to make things not horrible, as they often were in the past, we err too much on the side of generalizing too much and actually losing specificity within language, and that can be just as dangerous as being horrible, I think. I was thinking this about the Beano, where they have updated the characters in the comic strips. Now, I don't know enough to talk properly about this. I should research it properly. But I think they have ejected Walter the Softy from Dennis the Menace. Walter the Softy was a character that got bullied in every story and walked around with a flower, a bit like a kind of young gay Morrissey. We always assumed he was gay, and it was always an insult when we were kids, especially those kids who were gay in secret. But he was a kind of hero, Walter and his Softy gang, and as a gay kid you did see the world from his point of view. You weren't on Dennis's side, and of course Dennis was always a fool who got slippered by his father. He got beaten by his father at the end of each story, and Walter tended to triumph in the end. But he's been removed, and I don't think that's progressive. At least I think he's been removed. I must ask my friends who write for the Beano, and I must find out for myself. Similarly, Fatty in the Bash Street Kids. Either they'll have forced him to slim, or he'll have been removed in some kind of Stalinist attempt to prevent anybody overweight being in the Beano, because that's not right either. I do sometimes wonder if there's too much tidying up goes on. I don't know. I shall think about it, and I shall investigate the Beano and what it's doing these days. I suppose I feel a bit like it, a bit like the whole Davros business as well. And those people who said, Davros being in a motorised chair was very important to them as wheelchair-using kids, as kids who weren't mobile. That in science fiction you have three heroes. You've got Stephen Hawking, Davros, and Professor X of the X-Men. And when it came to playground games, they were three fantastic characters to be automatically cast as. But some people know better. Some people know best. And I think most people know better than me. That's not a bad... You could have that on a t-shirt, couldn't you? Everybody knows better than me. You coming over? I've overrun. I've gone to almost half an hour of chatter. That's because I've missed talking to you all, because I've been talking to everybody else all weekend, which is why my voice is low. I'll be back on in a couple of days and talking about what I intend to read for the rest of the month. In the meantime, somebody told me on Saturday, actually it was Matthew Waterhouse, that LA is no place to go book shopping. It's not a city for bookshops. Now, I have looked it up, and there seem to be a fair few of all kinds of bookshops, including one called The Last Bookstore, and I've watched a video about that, and it looks fabulous. I'm talking mostly about vintage or second-hand books, although kind of nice indie bookshops would be good as well. So anybody who knows, I'm sure there's people who tune into my program, tune into my show rather than my channel, who will know. Let me know about book shopping in LA. I need to know. Okay, everyone. Socks, come and say hello to everyone. Come and see. No, he wants dreamies. I've got to go and feed him some more of those. I will see you all again soon, and lots of love. Take care. Bye-bye.